Darktrace has a valuation of $1.65 billion and counts Insight, KKR, Summit Partners, and Samsung among its investors. Darktrace's innovative approach to cybersecurity has won more than 100 awards, and the company has been named one of the Wall Street Journal's Tech Companies to Watch, Fast Company's Most Innovative Companies, and the CNBC Disruptor 50. Please join me in welcoming Nicole Eagan to the stage for AI Defense or Threat.
Thank you very much, and I think this will be a great follow-on presentation to some of the comments we heard from Mark. And one of the reasons for that is we've actually started Darktrace about 5 years ago, and actually started from folks from GCHQ and MI5, so very much from the Five Eyes intelligence community approach. And we've built a system that's now been deployed in over 3,000 companies around the world in 105 countries. So again, we have a lot of lessons learned, and I will echo Mark's comments that we've come a long way in those 5 years, but it's an evolutionary process, and there's still a long way to go as well in deploying AI for cyber defense. There was a hack on Friday last week. It was reported in Motherboard. I think Vice might have reported a few days earlier. And this was actually an attack on GPS systems. It was two particular GPS systems. Both systems actually came out of China. They hacked into quite a bit of the different data, including the GPS location of over 27,000 vehicles that were across countries including South Africa, India, Morocco. And one of the things that they potentially could have done was inside that data was actually the ability, if the driver had it enabled, to disable the vehicle if the vehicle was traveling at 12 miles an hour or less. Now, it's interesting. I think this is not autonomous vehicles yet, right? This is GPS devices inside of our regular vehicles today. Darktrace's AI actually detected a somewhat similar attack, but that attack was actually on the GPS systems of police cars in the United States. And it happened about 1.5 years ago, and luckily our artificial intelligence was able to identify it and flag and alert the police department of that city, and no harm was done. We don't know the actual intention, but we think it was actually to potentially commit a crime or disruption in that city. And if they knew the GPS location of all the vehicles, they could try to avoid being in the wrong place at the wrong time. So we think that these cyber physical attacks are going to become much more commonplace going forward. So why is it that with all of the technology, and I'm sure many of you in this room have deployed a lot of detection technology, why is it that a lot of the attacks we hear about and read about are still getting through? Well, there's a few, I think, main reasons. One is it's clear the legacy approaches are not enough to keep up. So the attackers have moved beyond what rules and signatures can practically detect in many cases, so we need to augment those. The battlefield has shifted. There is definitely a lot more connection now between state-sponsored attacks and organized cyber criminals on a global basis. And while we'll still see nation against nation, I think we're seeing a lot more potential for nation-state inside of our private sector companies. The attacks are moving faster. I mean, WannaCry was a great example. There's others as well. But these machine speed attacks just move faster than human security teams can kind of fight against. And then finally, the human teams just literally get overwhelmed. We've all heard about just the number of alarm bells that go off and the number of things that they're trying to chase that aren't always relevant. And so the human teams get overwhelmed. What this does mean, and we all hear about the shortage, right, of cyber experts as well. So clearly, this is an area that's ripe for being augmented by AI and machine learning. I also, in talking to a lot of CISOs and CIOs across our customers, there's a lot of these digital transformation projects going on. I was just with a CISO of a major bank, and he said their kind of marketing and customer kind of innovation teams are running these digital transformation projects, and oftentimes they're run outside of the traditional kind of software development and security organizations. And they happen fast. Many of them spin up quickly in a cloud, but oftentimes they operate on actual real data in order to test the system. But sometimes because they haven't had the normal kind of DevOps and security wrapped around them, there's a number of new risks. So this is an area that's coming up a lot, where I think a lot of CISOs and CIOs are trying to figure out, how do they get plugged into that? How do they shore that up even before it becomes a production system? We also see a lot of security issues on things like manufacturing plant floors. And these are hard because you've got such a range of old and new in there. So you're trying to figure out how to deal with brand new IoT devices that are going on the manufacturing plant floor at the same time that you're dealing with 30-year-old systems. And it's not just the manufacturing plant floor, of course. It's any place in a company where you have connected devices. So we're also seeing a lot of this in building automation, whether it be everything from the HVAC systems to digital refrigeration units. And 1/3 of Darktrace customers, we've seen attacks in the last 6 months where the attacker just scans the network looking for connected devices. Default password hasn't been changed, just like in that motherboard attack where the password was 1234556. And so they're using that not because they want to attack the data in the IoT device, but many times they just want to get a foothold into the environment. So what do we do about this, and how do you use AI for cyber defense against these types of emerging problems and challenges? So in Darktrace's case, what we decided to do was we built AI algorithms based on the principles of the human body's own immune system. So if you think about the human body's immune system, it has an innate sense of self. It knows what's not self. And although our bodies are under attack all the time from bacteria, viruses, we understand, this innate sense of self understands when we're under attack, and it has a very precise and very rapid response. So think of that as how we use cyber AI for detection. So that's understanding normal pattern of life by analyzing all of the network and cloud traffic, and based on that pattern of life, understanding when something's gotten inside or starting to do lateral movement, or maybe it's someone that has access, like an insider, who is laterally moving and trying to move files outside of the environment. But that's step one. I think the more important part of the immune system is, what does it do about it? And this is the new area. And this is cyber AI response. We happen to call it autonomous response. But this idea is, once the AI detects it, how does it investigate it? What recommendations does it make? And what actions can it take? Now, out of our 3,000 customers, we have over 500 of those customers with this in what we call active mode, meaning that from the time the AI detects and either makes a recommendation or responds, it's less than 2 seconds. So this is where the market, we believe, needs to go to for these machine speed attacks. This is the part to start really paying attention to. And many times we find customers start by running it in what we call recommendation mode until you get comfortable that you see that the AI is making the right recommendation over and over again. But we'll talk about, how do you build that human trust that Mark mentioned? Because you can have the best cyber defense AI in the world, if you can't get the people on the security team and in the company to trust it, it just won't get used. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. So these are the modes. Recommendation mode, some people like to just run it in this. Usually I'd say on average, we see customers run it for about 3 months, where they just have the team looking at, okay, in all these different scenarios, what did it recommend? But we had a hedge fund here in New York, and the hedge fund said, we're going to shut this system off if it ever slows down or messes up a trade. So they asked us to add a feature and we called it human confirmation mode. And that's where it actually will send to the security team the recommendation and the action and the precise response it wants to take, but they want a human to confirm it only if it's during trading hours or in that sensitive part of the network. If it's somewhere else or outside of those hours, it's fine in active mode. And then finally, active mode, and that's where you've built the trust. And again, this is very precise. It's not like IDS, IPS, where it's all or nothing. This can take a very, very precise action. And one of the things that we learned, because it understands normal, it understands that pattern of life for every user and device, the action can be so specific. So let's take WannaCry. We had this in active mode across customers throughout Europe during WannaCry. And none of the ones that were hit by WannaCry actually had any operational outages. So we went back and actually studied what action did the AI take that was in active mode. The action it took was to enforce normal, first and foremost. So instead of the old reaction of something's wrong, take everything offline, it said, well, hold on. We know what normal is for this organization. Enforce normal. And then the security team behind the scenes could actually just address the strange communication from port to port that was not normal. But that's why there were no operational outages. So that really changes your whole way about thinking of how to respond. Because if the system automatically can enforce normal as step one, you're no longer in a crisis. So very interesting kind of way to change the dynamic, something we honestly learned from our own artificial intelligence. The other thing we learned in building trust is no one wants a black box. So we created a really neat 3D visualizer. Now you can see every data point and every data flow in your cloud, inside your environment, like you've never been able to see before. So now it's like the opposite of a black box. In fact, you're getting more visibility. And I mentioned that hedge fund that wanted human confirmation mode. What we decided is not everyone's sitting in a SOC all the time staring at a screen. So what if we actually connected this very securely to mobile devices and actually sent the notifications and the visualizations here and allowed people anytime they want to be able to confirm it right on the mobile device? This ended up becoming a very widespread feature. And overall, I think what we've learned through these 3,000 deployments over 5 years is there's going to be a lot of types of recommendations that people on the security teams make and that CISOs and CIOs make that weren't designed to the product, but are going to help build up that trust. And they're really important to listen to and to enhance the technology because that is what's going to get these teams to adopt it. So let's talk about some real-world examples. We literally have tens of thousands of examples. I've highlighted just a couple. This was one, it was actually during a sensitive merger and acquisition discussion. And there was a conference room these discussions were being held in, had video conferencing equipment. The attacker scanned the environment, I think pretty well had an inkling of what they were after, broke into the video conferencing equipment, but didn't turn the video camera on, just listened through the microphone. They listened to information and they kept that microphone on. I think their goal was probably, we don't know if it was a competitor, somebody who wanted to maybe trade or hedge one of the stocks in that M&A. But nevertheless, the AI was able to detect it and stop it. So how did it do it and how did all the other systems miss it? Well, there was no rule that prevented it or spotted it. But what it realized, the AI realized, there's other video conferencing equipment. And when it did clustering analysis, it figured out that none of the other equipment was operating with just the microphone without the camera, and more importantly, wasn't leaving the session open day and night, right? So it was able to detect this unusual behavior and stop that. Another one was actually, and this was in a Japanese financial services company, and apparently in Japan, there's quite a big trend not only to have CCTV cameras kind of outside buildings and maybe in lobbyways for security purposes, but they've added it inside of offices. And we're starting to see this. I know I saw a prototype in one of the building automation companies where they're using this for safety, right? So actually understanding where every person in a building is. In this particular case with the CCTV, the attacker scanned the environment, was able to break in through the camera. Again, not quite sure what they were after, but they were exfiltrating all of the footage and not to the outside camera company. And so again, the AI was able to detect it and stop it before that data exfiltrated. There's an interesting example. We hear a lot about smart cities, and City of Las Vegas is actually one of the world's leading smart cities. And they actually have sensors. One of the things that I find is really interesting, in addition to the sensors that are on the sidewalks on the strip for pedestrian safety, they also have sensors underneath the traffic lights. And if too many cars back up, it actually changes the light from red to green to improve the air quality, so reducing carbon monoxide levels. But they literally have deployed hundreds of thousands, now in the process of deploying millions of sensors across City of Las Vegas, including to their emergency response system. Darktrace is complementing their 5-person security team at City of Las Vegas, 3 full-time people, 2 interns, and artificial intelligence to protect all of that sensors in the smart cities for City of Las Vegas. There's case studies on our website if you're interested in more about the smart cities. But again, as we move to more AI, more sensor-based systems, we're going to have to build in this type of autonomous response to give us that kind of protection. And that leads me to cyber AI, small form factor. It's one thing to be able to do this maybe at the very large computer size of things. But if you look at where these markets are going, we're going to have to be able to bring this down. So we've been able to actually scale this down, yes, into software and software-based sensors that can sit in a cloud or can monitor IoT devices. But we've also moved it down onto Raspberry Pi-sized devices, ARM chips, so that it can live and be embedded everywhere. And I think that's going to be important as we move forward as well. Now, a lot of companies have AI projects, and as we heard from Mark from the NSA, that means we're going to be looking at things like adversarial AI, but we also have to recognize the attackers are going to use AI as part of the attack itself. So these are other areas of augmenting humans with AI. As I mentioned, it's not just to replace, but mainly augment the humans. It's to find patterns, to detect anomalies. It's to investigate and find what's interesting. And it's also to respond at machine speed. And it does have to be in a context so we can all understand why the AI made the decisions and what actions it's taking. There's a brand new project. We've actually had been working on it for 5 years. In general, we use a technique called unsupervised machine learning, for those of you that like to get into the machine learning types. And that unsupervised machine learning learns normal, right? And it's off of raw network traffic. It's only modeling everything that's happening in real time. It's no preconceived kind of models or notions of what a financial services company or healthcare company looks like. It does it in real time off of the raw network traffic. That's great for detecting anomalies. But Mark said something that was very interesting, which is how would you actually start to build a cyber AI analyst? Because right now we rely a lot on that innate sense of skill, right, and know-how that those analysts have. So we have 120 analysts. We hired a lot out of GCHQ, MI5, NSA, CIA, FBI, military intelligence, and we also hired a lot of smart college graduates to work for them. And we've been watching them using supervised machine learning for the last 5 years across the 3,000 customers. And what we did was watch. When an alert came in from the AI, what data sources did they look at? How did they investigate it? What did they find interesting? What did they find uninteresting? And we've been able to build a cyber AI analyst. We haven't publicly announced it. This is one of the first places I'm actually speaking publicly about it. We've just gotten to the point in the last couple months where the cyber AI analyst is now outperforming our best world-class AI analysts at certain investigations. Things like DNS tunneling, for example, long-running low and slow attacks, clouds that are dribbling out small amounts of information in very clever ways. We're finding that the cyber AI analyst now has outperformed at 44% to the tie at 40% to the human analyst at 16%. So it's gotten to the point where this is getting very, very good, very, very real. 1,000 of our 3,000 customers now have a cyber AI analyst working side by side with their human analyst teams. So again, still early days, but great results this far. So what we've done is we've built a Darktrace, what we call offensive AI R&D lab. And the reason for that is we need to be able to figure out what these AI attacks could look like. And we're using some of the world-class kind of red team style attackers to create what they think the attacks will look like. Many of them kind of say, okay, if you looked at all the steps in a Lockheed Martin kill chain kind of style, what type of ways could attackers use AI in each place? So you end up with AI, malware, and those type of things. We actually found when we went to our mathematicians and our 35 PhDs in machine learning, they came at it entirely differently. And they've created some really interesting AI-style attacks. We have to do this in a very, very secure way. But the reason to do this is to see how the AI cyber defense will react and how it can get stronger against these offensive AI attacks. And we think this is really important work because we imagine there's some AI attacks and machine learning attacks now, mainly in things like social engineering, automation. They're interesting, not all that clever yet. But when AI attacks become commonplace, when they become mainstream, when they become more advanced, the only way we're going to be able to defend against them is with AI cyber defense and autonomous response. Thank you very much.